They would come up with all kinds of shorthand with this to send it very quickly. The most popular bit of shorthand that is meaningless shorthand, but it's easy to send out, is what is the Morse code signal for danger, in trouble, in danger, you need help. SOS, you've heard of that? What does SOS stand for? No. Nothing. Doesn't stand for anything. I know it. S is ... O dash. S ... It's easy to get out, easy to hear the difference. So SOS means nothing. It just means SOS. And so, once you have this, the big things are, think about this for a second. News. You can get instantaneous news relative. I know not quite like today, but it's overnight it would change. News and information very quickly. But there's something else. So you get, for example, not just know what's going on, but this is really important. You can get stock prices, commodity prices. You can plan things in advance because you have instantaneous communication. But here's the biggie. If there's a telegram, one person or one entity, one group can operate companies all over. They don't have to be in the factory. So this is what you have to get down for telegraph, because it's something people don't really think about in communication. This allows for bigger companies. Bigger. If you can be bigger because you don't have to actually be there, that means you have a competitive advantage. It's something that people just didn't think about, and all of a sudden like, oh, that changes everything. I can control from one centralized location. And this would change everything, therefore, from military operations to railroads. Think about a railroad. The bridge is out. We can send the line down that the bridge is out. Little things like that. What is this? Yeah, sewing machine. It was hand cranked. Well, you can hook this to a wire or a belt in a factory. Now, it's one of those things. They could have made a sewing machine before this, but without the power source, it didn't make sense. Or without mass-produced textiles. There's a need. This revolutionizes clothing. Now you can have mass-produced clothing instead of by hand. Why do you think there are sizes? Mass-produced. That actually came out of the Civil War. You got to make uniforms quick. They can do it because the sewing machine's mass-produced. Well, you can't do. If you're mass-producing, you can't make it for each individual. So they just kind of came up with sizes. Here's a regular size guy, thus medium. And that's where it comes from. You can mass-produce those. What's this? That's cotton gin. We will come back to that. Here's a couple really big ones too. McCormick and his Reaper. Halloween's coming. That's so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have 10 horses pull me. And I'm going to go through the lanes and chop the wheat with this. Then the wheat and or students in the hallway will go into this and will beat that wheat and knock the grain out. So instead of by hand having to scythe it, which the Grim Reaper is not with the scythe, that's the mechanical Reaper. See, isn't that a great costume? Between periods, just mow them down. But they would have to cut it by hand and then literally beat it, and the grain would come out. That was the fastest way to do it. This does it all in one fail swoop. And have you heard of a combine? That's all a combine is. A combine is just a bigger Reaper. This is pulled by horse. They could do the work of 10 or 15 people. Is this good or bad for small farmers? In the short run, it seemed good, doesn't it? You got to pay for it. You got to go into debt. Yeah, this is the mechanization would be the beginnings of the end of small farmers. The steel tip plow, John Deere. I should ask, what did John Deere invent? I bet half you would say the tractor. Not yet, but this could cut through the hard topsoil of the plains with a steel tip plow. So you would ride here, pulled by horses or mules. This would knock the dirt off. Has anyone ever plowed a field by horse? Well, let's do that then. We could plant some grass in Partridge Knoll because there's already kind of grass there. It's really hard, but still faster, more efficient. But now you got to pay for it. This would revolutionize agriculture. And then we talked about the railroad one. I want to get to this. We had this from yesterday. I just wanted to get this for the essay question. So let's move on to 8. Why did it happen here? Why American system? Why interchangeable parts here? What made the United States relatively unique along with Britain? Why before France? Why before the places that's going to be Germany? Germany's coming, 1871. Why? Well, that's what, of course, people in Britain and the United States are going to say. And then France would say, we're better than you, you're inferior, so we should colonize you and take everything you have. That's coming. It's going to be called social Darwinism. We're coming to that. It's happened. Yeah. They'll say, we must be smarter and better than everybody else. No, that's, of course, garbage. But, well, I mean, okay, we're better than them out there. We know that, correct? Do that. But why here? There's 3 big reasons. And it was similar in Britain, but Britain had this influx of money from the slave trade. Here, demand. There's more demand in the United States than any other country. And that includes, for example, the Kingdom of China. They had a lot of people, but most of the people had no money. Most of the people were lower class, middle class, or lower class, working class. Now, upper class people have enough money to afford all these trappings of upper class life. At that time, it would have been a mansion, a stables. A big thing was, a big symbol of wealth in this era was you had servants, meaning people in the lower class. That was a big symbol of it. Today, you know what the super rich have. They have enough money that they don't have to work necessarily. They can survive in this lifestyle. Most people are lower class or working class. Virtually everything they have goes to survival. Virtually everything. So anything they have beyond that, they have to go into debt. Middle class is a small group. It's not the median. It's just between the upper and lower class. And they're people who can afford some trappings of an upper class life. So at this era, in that era, it was a big deal. I have to work, but I can get a servant. Somebody they can pay less, work a miserable life. It's hard work being a servant. But you can afford that. And a house maybe, and a stable. A big one have a carriage. Today would be, you can afford to buy your house. Pay for it. Send your kids to college. Take vacations without going into a great amount of debt. Probably know this. Most people have to go into a great amount of debt to buy a house. And so middle classes, it's a big thing. But there are more in the United States here. They had to work, but there's more to buy stuff, significantly more. How do we know this? Well, it's hard to figure out wealth. I mean, what is land worth? It fluctuates all the time. Land values at this time last year were skyrocketing. Now they're actually dropping. So it's really hard. Or for that matter, how much is a painting worth? You know what I mean? It could be. But here is the approximate wealth of the top 1%. This is Thomas Piketty, is this French economist. So did extensive research on this, picking 3 countries: United Kingdom, so Britain, France, and the US. And this is the wealth of the top 1%. And because of the Industrial Revolution and the nature of the aristocracy there, in the United Kingdom, the top 1% had nearly 70% of the wealth at about the turn of the last century. So France is a little bit lower, about 60%. The US, only 45%. So most of the wealth is on top. But with the United States 45% or 40%, that leaves almost 60% of the wealth with everybody else. If they have more wealth, they can spend more. Does that make sense? So if the wealth all focuses on top, and you'll notice something really interesting is combination of depression, war, and policy changes by government to try to equalize the wealth in all 3 of these countries. You notice how the wealth at the top of 1% went down. This is actually pretty crucial because this is the world I grew up in. It's different now. You'll notice Britain and France is down here for the top 1%. The US is here, and since 2010, what is this wealth? About here. It's almost 45 to 50% of the wealth is in the top owners. It's hard to tell because the last 2 years, wealth has literally been just, all the wealth has been sucked up at the top owners. I was just reading about the Mars family. You know what the Mars family owns? The planet. Yes, they own the planet. No, candy bars, like Mars. You know. Oh, yeah, candy company. Their net wealth in the last year and a half has gone up from about $40 billion to $120 billion in the last year and a half. I can't even comprehend that kind of wealth. But then what's happening is, wealth is just, it's happening for, they just trillions of dollars have just been sucked up during the pandemic to the very top. Huh? Well, you do things like Elon Musk on a vanity project on Twitter. Doesn't make any money. Because they have all the money. They don't make, Twitter doesn't make any money.
Either Mars can buy Mars.
It's by half. Yes. Well, there could be a lot of ways, but the biggest are high taxes for the top. And you have to do something about getting rid of monopolies. And we don't do that. But they would argue the wealth should be on top because they're smarter than us and they want to earn money, including ought to earn money.
I bet their opinions were.
I bet their ideas about policy would change. But the thing about this is this was, we'll get to this. Why this happened. It's called Keynesian economics. We'll get to it. There are reasons things happen. Things don't happen accidentally. So, and you could argue this is a good thing because also with people with that kind of wealth might encourage people to work harder. Oh, wow, I might get that someday. Of course, how many billionaires can there be? So but there's more here, more people to buy stuff. Demand is incredibly important. No one's going to start a business. No one's going to buy the capital necessary unless there's people to buy it. Does that make sense? It seems so intuitive, but sometimes people forget that. Next, we have this great system where we had a shortage of labor, especially skilled laborers. If you have unskilled laborers, that means there's not as much resistance to like Eli Whitney's machines. There was a lot of resistance in France because they just had an overwhelming number of skilled workers. So France was a little behind in the Industrial Revolution. Part of the reason why they had by far the biggest economy in Europe in the 1700s, but by the end of the 1800s, they were falling behind Britain and a brand new Germany. So skilled laborers. Yes, there's going to be a lot of skilled laborers that we displace in the United States, but nobody would really realize it until the factories just overwhelmed everything. Next, education. The United States had the most educated population. Remember the Land Acts of 1785, the Enabling Act, which said that there'll be public education. The money from one section will go to education that came from Ohio. And that would set the stage for a very educated population. Now, there's obviously different degrees of education. And most people in this century, especially until about the 1880s, education for them was going through our equivalent of about 87 or 80, which is still better than nothing. But by the Civil War, it's over 90% of males and just under 90% of young women were literate, at least had some reading and writing skills in the North, which is very high, higher than any place else. The South was always behind, still is. South has lower education rates. Now, that is just, how do you rate someone's literacy? You have a test can be, that's one day, right? So grain of salt with this. But it was closer to about 75% of males and about 60% white. Plays very few. Some will be trained, some will be allowed to do that because they're not going to be winners of money. And it's still there, it goes up and down. Right now, supposedly it's going down, but we've had a big national trauma and it was a test. They're all done online and those are really hard to do. So I kind of feel bad. You guys have to, this last one's the last, no, you have one more beside that. It's really hard to take a test on. I don't think anyone really likes it. In paper, you can see it, it's there. Combination of a number of things, but partially because it's a much more stratified society. The Industrial Revolution had not hit, so people were more rural and scattered, so it's hard to get into school together. And they didn't want to pay for it. They don't want tariffs because they think tariffs would eventually undermine slavery. And I'll tell you more about how that happened. Yeah. You don't have that skill set. When you're, let me get to the last now, what you find out. That's what we're learning here. We're learning water filling. But I thought can, I was just making a guess. But there's something else. The United States had this idea of public education. And eventually, by the end of the century, it was the idea of universal education. And that is where Horace Mann would not be somebody we had to know on a quiz on chapter 12, let alone anyplace else, if not for the fact that his ideas of public education hit during the Industrial Revolution. And I love these early schools, writing on the board, but I love this. You can pull the abacus down, up and down so that she could do the math. And when I was in elementary school, our teacher still used an abacus in front of us. It's actually, she could go through math really quick. But anyways, universal. But you notice I put lots of asterisks. There are a lot of people left out of this. And rural individuals, or you're going to have kids who have to work in factories. And they would work all day and they go to school at night. Is that universal education? Yeah, that's what it's kind of. But think about those kids who don't have to work 8 to 10 hours and then go to school. Isn't that a big difference? I mean, those of you who have to work, you know what I'm talking about. If you have to work very late at night and come to school in the morning, it's really hard. No matter how much you want to do it, it's hard to focus. And therefore, what are you going to get out of it? But there's a couple reasons why. First off, make good citizens. But then again, it's going to be complex. Voting age citizens, but you know, knowledgeable, voting, know the material, but sometimes you never know who's telling the truth. There's going to be disinformation throughout this entire system. People think it's new now. No, it's always been this way. And it's hard to decipher through. Who can you trust to tell you what's right or wrong? You're fine. Okay, but also remember what I told you about workers. It trains you to be workers. And all of you have been taught to do what? Obey. Right? You're being taught. Remember I talked about this. No, sit. Okay. Know what you're doing.
Okay.
I know you're proving that I'm not obeying, which in a way is no free will for yourself. Because you're just doing something opposite. You're not really thinking about it. Just by doing something, if someone says do something, you say, oh, I won't do it. That's not free will. Is it really? I'll show you. No, free will is you making the decision. Yeah, it's good or bad. Yeah.
So our country was supposed to move public education. So how is this take other countries?
Over the next century. France off elements of it. They came close and they kind of abandoned it, came to it. But you can really see it in the continent of Europe. You'll see elements of this very quickly in Japan in the 1850s. Other countries would catch up within the ways of colonization, squash it. But also one more thing about workers, and you're taught the bells, right? And we all know when to eat, correct? And you notice, I thought you were tardy, so you got in trouble, so you're trained to be good workers. That's actually true, isn't it? Be there on time or you're in trouble. And one more thing. Education, this is really important. Education teaches you to adapt. You can adapt quicker to change. During the Industrial Revolution through this day, there has been change at an unprecedented scale. Nothing like this has ever happened in the world. How change happens all the time. Now, there are things changing, but the rate of change is nothing like it was then. Just because it was so different. the world that's going to be created in the 1830s, 1840s. But when you're educated, you are taught to deal with change. You expect change. The lower level of education, the less you're trained, you're taught to expect change and deal with it. And you'll notice something. People less educated are more resistant to change, and older people get their resistance to change because their education was a very long time ago. And then that's where you get a lot of, in my day, kids just aren't tough, which is true. But that's why that happens. The older you get, you've gone through so much change, and now I'm tired of it. Yeah.
If trying to teach students and children that have to change, why do we have such strict standards that are always the same?
I know, there's some contradictions there, aren't there? And also, ideally, we'd like you to be questioning people that listen to things and question and think critically. And at the same time, we want you to obey. Yeah, I don't, there's many contradictions built in the system. Yeah, that's supposed to make sense completely, but it's built into the system. We want you to think critically and then obey.
But like, why?
Obey.
Why?
So you have to change and obey. There's always a balancing.
Is it volunteer?
No, I seriously do not have an answer to that. Because at times, yeah, if we gotta teach this, we have 40 minutes, you gotta kind of follow some rules. But at the same time, couldn't that be manipulated by somebody to get you to do things you don't want to do? Or follow along? Yeah,
It goes back to the social contract.
that's a really good point. It does. Remember the social contract, we're expected to know when our rights are being infringed. So critical thinkers should do that, but at the same time, aren't your rights infringed on all the time? It's a contradiction. And we have to make a balancing act all the time. Quick run. So with that, so naturally, education, we had to do this, and this is the product of education.
They spelled obliterated.
Yeah, that's, okay, I don't know if this is real or not. Is this somebody wrote it with their left hand? You know, but supposedly it was written.
I just they should think that they're young,
That's
but
called.
those are harder.
That's taller.
But person who's high rated just have really bad handwriting.
True.
Who's really young and have way too much expected out.
I don't know, and I have a feeling that it's made up, but I still enjoy it immensely, so I show it. So let's get to kind of the big deal that's coming. The new economic system, capitalism. And even though it's pre-capitalism, a lot of the ideas come from Adam Smith. Now, books in the 18th century have very long names. So the theory of moral sentiments and the inquiry into the nature of the causes of, but everyone calls it the Wealth of Nations. So only write down the Wealth of Nations. And it was written in 1776, kind of a big year, huh? Remember those heady days of the Declaration of Independence? The Wealth of Nations. Now, Adam Smith wrote this literally as it's being created. But he's still writing pre-capitalism. And he took, however you want to put it, liberally from two Arab philosophers from the 1300s. And there's nothing wrong with that. You take ideas and build on it. You stand on the top of the shoulders of giants. But he did not invent this. But he put it together. And it's actually a really good read. Adam Smith could write, except for one problem. He wrote in the 18th century. There were no grammatical rules or dictionaries. So when you read it, there's one sentence that's a full page. It's just one sentence. Yeah. And it's just really awkward. We're used to a short sentence, you know. It's hard to read. I read it for a class and I didn't like it. It's like a lot of things you have to read when they force you to read it. I understand that. And then I read it on my own and I really liked it. I think I was in college then. I could kind of, take my time and get into it, get into the flow of reading it. I highly recommend it if you're really interested in the term economics. Because this in many ways was the first economics treatise, even though he was just called a natural philosopher. And just to remind you, that's how people deal with scarce resources. They produce it, they transfer it, like all the transfer, the consumption of it, everything from food to iron to steel to coal to frozen concentrated orange juice. Correct? The lifeblood of society. So there's Adam Smith. He grew up in Edinburgh. I have a poster of Adam Smith right over there, the green poster next to the head of a former student of mine. That was her senior volleyball thing, and it was in my room one day to scare me. So I kept it up, and now I put it up there. And she actually came back to visit me a few years ago. She's a senior in college now, and she laughed very hard when she saw that her head is still sitting right there. She's a very good artist, so she covered my room with little artistic. You didn't survive. And yeah, just go back up. Oh, if you have a picture of Adam Smith, the face must always point north. It's federal law. And no, it just happens to point north right there. So what he talks about here is he lays out the free market. Capitalism is a market economy. Now, there were markets before capitalism. There were markets. Markets are not, capitalism did not create the market. There were markets before capitalism, and if capitalism goes away, there'll probably be a market there. No, I have no idea what would be coming, but there's a market, and that's an area for the exchange of goods. So it just a place where people, they sell and buy. It could be a store, it could be a market like stock market or commodities market. So it's the idea of where you go someplace and you buy your frozen concentrated orange juice. And I think of a store, I think of opposite or something, but that is a form of a market, but it's any number of things. So a single market would be like the car market or the iron market. And this kind of economics is what we call micro, one market, all the sale of one thing. Macro is like the entire economy. This is not business. Business is someone owning a company trying to make money. Knowing economics helps you, but it's not the same thing. People think it is, and there are usually people who are very easily manipulated by those who do know about the economic system. But a couple things about it. First off, the whole idea is based on competition and self-interest. You're trying to get the best deal for yourself. If you go in the store, you're trying to get the lowest price possible for the best product that you want. And the same thing for a store. They want to save as much money on the product they sell and get as low a price as possible. It's competition. And the self-interest, Adam Smith said, people talk about noble goals and values, but what do people want? Okay, he was dealing with pounds, but I put the dollars. They want money, yeah. Adam Smith was an interesting guy. He hated the people who did it and thought they were really important for wealth. Just an interesting guy. And it's something important to understand. This self-interest, especially for those producing goods, whether it be a mine all the way to making a computer, or the production of even the printed word or media or whatever, it's a profit margin. Revenues minus costs. Revenues minus costs. How much you make, how much it costs. And obviously, the bigger that is, the more money you make. And what me saying that, most of you are thinking, of course, that's obvious. But it's really easy to confuse revenues for profit. You make money. You think, oh, I'm bringing all this money in, but my costs are up here. And don't forget, this is competition. So let's say you do start a company where you're producing orange juice. Sorry, frozen concentrated orange juice. And your revenues here, your costs are here. Your competitors are thinking the same thing. How do I increase this margin? Everybody's thinking that. They're all thinking that. It's that margin. So the margin is the difference between two areas. Thus, the paper, the margin between the invoice you write and the end of the paper, the margin. That's why it's the difference between two areas. Once again, of course, but when you think about it, okay, now makes sense. How do you do this? Well, I almost forgot something. I forgot to say something. It's hard to control your revenues, especially when other people are selling. So what's the best way to increase that margin between revenue and cost? You can drop your costs. Your margin goes up, right? In fact, think of it another way. If you're in competition with other countries or other companies, we're all selling frozen concentrated orange juice. I found out a way to drop my costs. What can I do to my price? I can drop it. That might drop my revenues, but my profit margin is still high because. Exactly. And so what can I do? I can drop, I can get my competitors out. By the way, what are your competitors doing? The same thing, or they're going out of business. So here's what we get. How do we drop the cost? Efficiency. And Adam Smith wrote about a division of labor, efficiency. If one person tries to make a musket, think about all the things you'd have to know how to make a musket. From puddling the steel to making the stock. But if you learn one skill, that's more efficient. And this is called productivity. The amount of production per worker. If you can get your workers to become more efficient, where you keep the same amount of workers, so the same cost, but they produce more, your cost drop. If they produce more per worker, that's productivity. Productivity goes up, you produce more. Your cost drop. Do you see where machines come in? And so there have been a few times in American society where the machines came in and productivity just exploded. That means they got more work per worker. We saw this in this century. We really saw it after World War II, from World War II to about the 1970s, and again in the 1990s. Productivity now is really low, really low. Most of the jobs that could have been replaced by a machine have been replaced by a machine already. And yeah, it's not happening. I remember when you guys were in elementary school and they said driverless cars are going to replace all drivers. And I remember telling my class when you were in elementary school and they were juniors, I said, it's 30 or 40 years away. It's actually 40 or 50 years away than now. So it's really, most jobs that can be replaced by a machine have been replaced. That's why productivity right now is really low. That's a problem. It's a real problem. Next. So with that, so what decides the price? A competitive market where supply and demand matters. That sets the price. That sets the price for raw materials. So that sets the price for the oranges. It also sets the price for the frozen concentrated orange juice and sets the price for the workers in there. And so this is the generic supply and demand curve. If you've taken a business class, they might have one chapter where they talk about this. Has anyone seen this curve before? It's a very famous curve. It's generic, but here's supply. If the price is low, they won't produce much. Does that make sense? If the price goes up, what's going to happen? Production will go up. It'll produce more. So if I'm making all kinds of money selling frozen concentrated orange juice, a lot of you will say, hey, that's a business I want to get into. And in a free market, anyone can join it, and some of you start making frozen concentrated orange juice. Everyone get that image? Now, when I say that, and you're like, oh, that's obvious. Yeah, it's obvious. And it's shocking how many people miss that. They forget about stuff like this. Same thing with demand. If the quantity is low, the price is really high. And then as you produce more, the price drops. And so that works. So if there's a lot out there, that's the demand curve, price is low. And that kind of makes sense. If people want something, they really want it, the price will go up. If people don't want it, the price drops. So I can remember when the first VCR machines came out. Have you ever heard of those? I don't know. They just seem so old now. Some of you might still have them. Your parents might have one. Your grandparents might maybe your great grandparents might have one. Yeah. Let me finish. Yeah. See, a videotape. A video, yeah,
Oh.
a VCR was a video cassette recorder. So with that, and it also shows you my age. When they were out, I remember the 1980s, and there's been a lot of inflation since then. But people were paying anywhere from $500 to $1,000 for one of those machines. That's about $2,000 to $3,000 today. And now, would anybody buy one? Maybe as kind of a curiosity piece. I found these old videotapes my grandparents had. DVD players are like that. So demand has dropped. When demand was high and everybody wanted one, the price was high. More companies started producing it, the production prices dropped. So this is where we get to an important concept that Adam Smith said. You can't decide where that's going to be. It could be anywhere. And so the visible hand of the market, we just have to find some kind of equilibrium point where supply and demand will meet. Where there's too many companies producing a good, some companies will go out of business and the supply will drop and meet the demand. Same deal. If the price is too high for what people want to buy, the price will drop until people can buy it. It'll find that. So that is the invisible hand of the market. But you notice I put this free in quotations. And this is idealized. Has there ever been a free market? Never. It has never happened in the history of humankind. There's always something to skew the market up or down or controls or that sort of thing. When Adam Smith was alive, it was, remember, mercantilism. It was skewing the market. And whenever there's a free market, somebody will ruin it. Any effort at a free market, always. I mean, if there's a market where people are buying, selling goods, let's say I'm out there selling frozen orange juice and I'm making a lot of money. What could easily skew the market if it's just, we're all free and open, we can sell what we want, no rules, we're all gonna make money. Yes. Let's say no government, the government won't get in the way. I'm making money. Yeah.
So many people.
That could be, go out of business, but still, I'm the best, so I'm making money. Let's say, what if you want my money? And you come up behind me with a hammer and take it. And now the market is skewed. And anyone says, no, you can't do that. Well, bang, bang. Anybody else? Oh, you're going to give me your stance? Oh, thank you. And the market is skewed. You think I'm kidding you? Let's take a trip to Somalia and we'll find out what that's like. So, Adam Smith is writing All Things Being Equal. All things being equal, he said, that's when he said laws like laissez-faire. If there's hands off by government, because he thought government only supported monopolies. Remember the East India Company? You get hands off, then if government just protects people, so don't allow the guy with the hammer, and then allow for markets, all things being equal, all things being equal. You notice I'm saying, there's no big gap between the very wealthy and the poor, all things being equal. We can enter the market, go out of the market. It will lead to competition. All things being equal, competition will come rolling in and money will be made. Now, we can argue whether or not that's true, and he knew this was idealized. But that's why he said laws out there, because governments always held, as he saw it, the big. Is that true?
Yes.
A lot of the time, yeah, because the big can influence government, but not always. It's very complex. But yeah, probably most of the time. But, oh, that's from his book. Taking pins, actually. And this is where you get the idea of, he said, let the market decide what companies are good, what products are good. If you come up with a product in a free market, you can enter, try to sell it. Either you make money and you survive, but then other people enter the market, or you go out of business. Let the market decide. If a lot of you come into the business, prices will drop. But this is pre-capitalism. Adam Smith, and this is going to shock you, is going to die. Yes, I made the pilgrimage and took a picture of his grave in Edinburgh. Adam Smith will die just as capitalism is taking off. And he didn't see that capital. That's machines. He didn't see that. He knew the word capital, but there was no real capital yet. All of a sudden, you have all these machines just popping up, like the textile mills and the steam engine. And that is going to raise the cost and raise the risk. And what kind of people can afford the risk? They have to have one. And he never predicted this. And so, with that, capitalism will develop outside the realms of Adam Smith. So that means only one thing. Oh. Do not trust me. She just robbed a bank. Who's with me? Let's write a thesis. Let's get a broad thesis. Yes. Does everyone understand what that meant? Yeah, we all understand. So, remember, topic, a Y tied together, and A, B, and C. By the way, this is the definition of a broad question. Is that good? That a broad question? Yes. No. It's good because you write what you know. When it's so broad, doesn't your mind just go, yeah? So think about the 3 areas we talked about that you're most confident to write about. That would be your A, B, and C. Come up with something. This would be a little more generic, tied together. Write the thesis. You have 30 seconds. Go. 29, 28, 16, 4. Would it help if I just ring the bell? Or where the bell? We talked about lots of things so far. Economics. Education. Complete perfection. Okay, go back and look. When you're done, you have an X and a Y. Think about 3 things of your topic paragraphs. Really close. Okay, it's then. Wait, what's the 76? What system? That's exactly it. Yeah, but better's a little more, better, I mean, better's relevant. But you can have a camera. That's good. The Y can be a little more broad. The A, B, and C have got to be more specific. that makes sense. As seen in, or because, or as shown by. Then you can tie it into this new economic system. Capitalism will change. Now, I know the bell's about ready to ring. Once again, I did not time this very well. I blame whom? Thank you, Danny, for stepping up to the plate. Stops. Here's mine. Do you notice how I did that? Earlier? So, that is broad. And then where do I narrow it down? Boom, boom, boom. Good? Hey, that. Everyone got it? We're cool? We're good? You know, try to make it through the weekend. I know the weekends are tough. You're away from me for 2 days. Yeah. But Monday will be like this. You'll be right back in here. Be so exciting, right? The weekend will just fly by. Fly by. And every year you get older too, weekends go faster. That's the best part. Are you dressing up for Halloween? Oh, you will not. What did I tell you? The Mechanical Reaper. Oh, yeah. It's gonna be so exciting.
See you Monday, Mr.
Yeah, better watch out. You get those short IDs from me. Monday's it. I'm not gonna remind you, you have to do it. Or you get the grade you got on it. It happens, but not, you know.
I'll get it.
Good. No problem. Sounds cool. Have a great weekend on that. Walk away. Oh.
You see that cat?
I know.
I would have hit the ground.
Do you feel that? I said hot. It feels, it's hot. It is hot.
I just know.
Maybe. Yeah. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So where are you?
I only had these for what?
You want to fix those?
No.
Oh,
Do you want to quit? Quit? I heard we're having a quiz.
What?
Brooklyn wants a quiz.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
You have a quiz today, and I was like, what? Like, yeah, we couldn't get to it till artists on Monday.
Nice suggestion. No, it's great.
We're doing the moon landing in special topics. Landing on the moon.
So I kind of.
We're doing conspiracy theory, so I do this thing on, because there's a belief that people did not land on the moon. So we go through it all and prove that no, we did not land on the moon. Most of us were not even alive when it happened. Right? Has anyone seen the conspiracy theories about the moon landing, the flag, and all that stuff?
Yeah.
It's entertaining, it's fun, yeah. I have been so.
It's around.
I have people, I give you a list, we have to talk about it, or something else.
Every other conspiracy.
So I've allowed some people to do some one like that, try to ask me, I'm pretty open, you know, obviously, but that's kind of the Illuminati stuff. Okay, we're gonna have a quiz on Monday. So I did assign 351 to 379. I did not give a quiz. There's a few pages left of chapter 8. Don't send me emails. Not you, I'm just talking to somebody else who can't hear me because I'm talking to my computer screen. Figured that one out myself. But when we quiz, I want you to finish the rest of chapter 8. There's a little bit left. It's a simple little quiz.